Previously on Cycle 99. While we wait, how about a peek into our previous tale? I'm sure I won't read it as well as Benoit, but I'll do my best. The spoonful of berry red filling traveled gracefully towards the pink lips of Azalaïs d'Altier, a beautiful woman, nay, the most beautiful woman, and the cleverest. The past is littered with the vessels of the greatest sailing nations, if not for the foreboding and distinctly non-English jungle looming beyond the stream. Dark trees with thick brown bark clustered together, vines crisscrossing between them, and strange flowers turning the jungle floor into a riot of color. Venturing just a few steps into the jungle, they dared go no further, although they could feel it calling to them. Zeppelin was not the most efficient way to travel, neither for speed nor for cost. But it had a certain magic about it, and that was thought to be quintessential if one wanted to find the lost island. There were letters etched into it, dug deep into the wood like magical runes. Azalaïs, je viens. Episode 7, Romance in the Skies. Cycle 99 is a swashbuckling adventure story about extinction, magic, and hope, where you design the characters. Chapters release every Tuesday. Visit patreon.com/pitchpine productions for free to vote on chapter and character polls. This story is family-friendly, but may contain occasional strong language and mild violence. Welcome aboard the airship Bannockburn. Okay. I'm gonna grab Cycle 97 off the shelf real quick, because Azalaïs already knew about the Turnsole when Thatch arrived. At least, that's what I assume she meant by quite a ways needing Thatch's help, which means the Turnsole was here before. Wait, have you forgotten the Turnsole too? Well, we'll get to that. But first, who was telling Cycle 97's story? Nefas, no last name. I've never met him, but I guess he is my chosen one? Like the one you chose before Benoit, who was chosen before me? Does anyone have a word for that? Well, Nefas, let's hear what you have to say about Aza. Ping Yang warned me to expect cruel jokes from the universe, and she was correct as always. I was under the impression that you chose me because I possessed the requisite skills and experience to properly recount your next tale. I expected my adventure, my trials and tribulations would adequately prepare me for it. And perhaps that will become true in time with Cycle 97's other great heroes, but it is certainly not true now. Did you intend this? Did you intend to leave me off kilter right at the start? You would choose me, Nefas, to tell the story of Azalaïs d'Altier, who was everything I was not? Certainly I was not the prodigal daughter of well-to-do French-Canadian butchers. Prodigal Azalaïs was because her mother and father gave her everything she ever wanted, and with her parents' hard-earned cash, she moved to Hollywood at 16 to become a stuntwoman and action hero. Growing up, she'd peered at the movie posters plastered to the inside of the 116 bus every day on her way to school, and she coveted Hollywood's glamorous smiles and thrilling adventures. A glamorous smile Azalaïs was already fortunate enough to possess. The thrilling adventures would come in time. Even as a child, Azalaïs was beautiful and confident. She was also clever and perceptive. She had an inventor's mind and a sharpshooter's eye, though her career as Hollywood's new starlet did not give her many opportunities to make use of them. What she lacked in education and training, she made up for with curiosity, a lethal combination. Though it may be difficult to believe, I do not possess the rose-tinged glasses that blinded the world to Miss d'Altier, but even I can appreciate her talent and beauty. More than famous, however, Azalaïs was exalted. Far and wide, she found those who worshipped her, and she felt their adoration like California's sunbeams. Already cradled in the fickle luxuries of stardom within months of her arrival to Hollywood, Azalais's first starring role was a plucky, gun-toting cowgirl in the latest pulp adventure film featuring an airship bound for the Lost Island. But her first day on set, the rose-tinted wool was pulled from her eyes. Azalais Deltier looked around to find that her grand adventure was, in fact, fiction. The sword at her hip and the revolver in her hand were merely props, the cranking and clanking engine and the wooden deck below her feet were fabrications of clever set and sound design. Azalais Deltier was not about to embark on a true adventure. Romance in the Skies was the last film she ever made. Giving up was not in Azalais's prodigious vocabulary, and she resolved to find a new adventure, a real one. She would be the first to reach the fabled Lost Land, which her mother had always called Atlantis. Inspiration came to her on a steamy summer day in 1981, as she lay in the grass atop Mount Royal, the humid air thick with such heavy things as whims and wishes and daydreams. She wanted her own adventures, and she wanted them to be real. Azza decided to learn traditional swordplay. There was talk of a voyage, a real one, to find Atlantis, and Azalais would make herself useful to the crew of the submarine Eurydice at any cost. In the 2 years since she'd abandoned her acting career, Azalais was already well on her way to becoming an adventurer of great merit. She had thus far excelled in her training as a mechanic and gunslinger. And so, 20 years old and still running from her former stardom, Azalais Deltier, Québécoise, modern, ambitious, selected her new swordplay instructor, Benoit de Mort, Parisian, traditional, and snobbish. But though she had honed her innate talents and become a capable marksman and discerning engineer, she had not yet honed the finesse to match Benoit on the dueling mat. Autumn in Paris was beautiful, and the old Azza would have swanned around the city offering signatures to her admirers and enjoying the special treatment of stardom. The new Azalais, the true one, the aspiring adventurer, was instead groaning in frustration as she clashed with Benoit again and again. With each practice bout, she failed, and Benoit sneered in her face and spat the word cowgirl at her, as though she was nothing more than her old starring role. He shook his head at her footwork, immune to her fame and her beauty. Though she failed, and failed miserably, her stubbornness did not allow her to admit defeat. Foil, épée, saber, and even Kendo's bamboo shinai scraped and clacked against each other day after day. Every time Azalais's parry cleared but her riposte missed, or her footwork stumbled, Benoit thwacked her over the head. Encore, he commanded, delighting in her frustration. Finally, Azalais had had enough. She threw her helmet to the ground and charged forward with a powerful strike. At first, Benoit wasn't fazed, and made a swipe for her with languid confidence. She ducked, hair swinging around her face like the rippling waters of Montreal's St. Lawrence. She dodged into Benoit's guard, lunging not to reach him with her blade, but instead to trip up his footwork. Thrown off kilter, he stumbled back. She pressed her advantage, crossing her feet, a move illegal in fencing, but she didn't want to be a fencer, damn it. She wanted to be an adventurer. With her leading shoulder and her elbow, she knocked Benoit to the ground. Panting heavily, curls cascading down her white fencing gear, Azalais swung her blade around and flicked the blunted point, letting it come to a rest just shy of Benoit's heaving throat. She smiled, eyes dancing, like sunlight on the Seine. That is when he began to love her. Not like her worshippers, the critics who had praised her performances, the paramours who had been enamored with her beauty. Benoit loved Azalais enough to let her go aboard the Eurydice on its maiden voyage, newly skilled at swordplay and with a scimitar at her hip. Submersibles, like airships, could be packed full of whimsy and sent off to explore parts unknown. Perhaps, went one theory, the lost land was not to be found by sky, but below the waves. When word reached Benoit that the Eurydice was lost at sea, he loved Azalais enough to sell his Paris fencing studio and buy his way aboard the airship Bannockburn on its maiden voyage. He loved her enough to follow her to the ends of the earth. And beyond. Azalais hacked up 2 globs of wet, salty sand and pulled several tendrils of seaweed from her hair. Her throat ached, scratchy and rough. The beach was cool at her back, and she closed her eyes to the moonless night, a sky filled with more stars than she'd ever seen. Her mind turned over the sands that cradled her, wondering at their origin. Africa, perhaps? Or some island in the Atlantic? Had the Eurydice made it as far as the Caribbean before imploding? A wave crashed below her feet and then crawled gently over her, lifting her up, perhaps like the arms of a parent, lending her a feeling of soft lightness. As Alaïs tried to conjure up the stressors of her previous life, the producers and agents looking to offer her new roles written just for her, the newspapers clamoring for a photo shoot or an interview. But that was fake, all fake, and this was real. Behind her, she could hear humming, buzzing insects from within dark trees and the odd cry of some nocturnal bird. Adventure, the island whispered to her with its 1,000 voices. The ocean curled over her, and Azalaïs felt her old life washing away. Her thoughts turned to her missing crewmates, and tears broke through. Were they dead? Then Benoit's expression of staunch belief in her, swam before her eyes, and she steeled herself. "They're not dead," she said to the island. "If I survived, then they survived too." A larger wave gathered, crested, and then plunged, coming all the way up to play with Azalaïs's hair. As the cool, dark water receded, something solid went clunk against her foot. Azalaïs shot up, then cried out in delight at the sight of her leather belt, which held both her scimitar, a parting gift from Benoit, and her antique flintlock revolver, which she carried mainly for its intricate gold and ivory design, but could shoot with frightening accuracy in a pinch. Despite its weight and density, somehow the belt and weapons had managed to make their way from Azalaïs's private quarters aboard the Eurydice to this very beach. "Come on, Aza," she chided herself, and could hear Benoit's fondly derisive, "What, cowgirl, giving up already? The posters said you were plucky." She gazed out at the sea in front of her, then turned to the foreboding jungle at her back. Uncertainty clouded her thoughts. Stick to the coast or venture further in? Already her lips were cracking from the salt, and her tongue longed for a drink of fresh water, perhaps with a lemon wedge of all things. Her stomach craved nothing more than her father's smoked meat sandwiches. Azalaïs narrowed her eyes at the rippling waves. The gloom allowed little more than shifting shapes, but was there something big swimming beneath them? She pinched her face, trying to will the starlight brighter. The spiny back of some great and terrible creature arched over the surface of the waves, blotting out the stars that hovered at the horizon. With a cry of fear, Azalaïs scrambled up the beach, away from the water's edge. She hurriedly attached her leather belt and drew her scimitar, holding it out to the water, expecting jaws with sharp teeth or a tentacle covered in suckers to come for her next. No such threat emerged, only an odd tone, like whale song, which echoed up from the depths below. Sufficiently unnerved, Azalaïs reconsidered the black jungle. Feeling the twin weights of her blade and her forearm at each hip, the sand that had collected in her pockets, the salt water dripping from her hair, Azalaïs smiled. This was real. She felt a skip in her step and faced the trees without fear. Azalaïs! She could almost hear her name on the sea wind. Je viens. I'm coming. Je viens, she echoed, and strided forward. You may offer Azalaïs a blessing. Visit the Patreon to choose. Cycle 99 is written, created, and produced by Hannah Semmelhack. The theme song is The Boy and the Kite by Solitude. To vote on end of chapter and character creation polls for free, visit patreon.com/pitchpineproductions. If you want to chat with me or with other fans, join our Discord, link in the description. Thank you to my lovely beta readers, Fiona, Aaron, and Paige, and to Basil, official lore keeper. Special thanks to Seraph and CK. And thank you for reading, listening, and voting. May Fate's 4 winds carry you back to our skies again soon.